People didn't have confidence in the data that was in the CRM. Our duplicate count was through the roof. There's this sort of patchy, inconsistent levels of quality of data enrichment. Makes it difficult for us to make good decisions. And the responses I was getting from a lot of agencies, they didn't get it. We wouldn't have been able to do a tenth of what we set out to achieve without the help of Sculpted. I am Nick. I started at Tracksuit about 5 months ago in September 2024 as the first marketing operations hire. So Tracksuit is a brand tracking company that does brand tracking, but not in the traditional sense. So we've created an always-on SaaS product that enables brands, mainly consumer brands, to track their core brand health metrics in market on a month-by-month basis. Traditional brand tracking would be one-off looks at sort of your brand awareness or your consideration or preference that the consumers in your market have for your product against your competitors. Tracksuit allows you to do that monthly in an always-on automated way. So you can see the trend of your brand health over time and how your different sort of investments in brand, how they impact how your brand is perceived and your awareness levels in those general brand health metrics. We're growing super fast, really quick. We tripled in ARR over the last 3 years and doubled last year, and we're on track to double again this year. When I joined, we were about 90 people. 3 months later, 120. So we're on this awesome trajectory. It's really fun, but there's a lot to do. HubSpot was a little bit of a mess, is probably an understatement. A lot of people doing amazing activities and marketing initiatives and things like that, sales, outreach, all sorts. So trying heaps of great things, all in the right areas, but there wasn't really much process. It was just like chuck something into the CRM, set up this property, that property, the other thing for this one-off use case, and off we go. So I sort of came and was tasked with like cleaning up the CRM, all of the data, because it was very apparent that it was very unreliable. People didn't have confidence in the data that was in the CRM. Our duplicate count was through the roof, where to the point where HubSpot stops tracking it after a certain point. It gives you like a to the nearest 1,000 kind of number. Lots and lots to clean up. Over 1,000 properties. We've cut that down to about a quarter now, which is great, but lots to sort of wrangle. And it was very clear to me that we didn't have that trust in the data, that confidence, and enrichment was a really important part of that. Bad data means people don't trust it, which means like as simple as we can't create trustworthy reports to tell us how many serviceable leads did we generate this month through our inbound channels. It's really hard to place a good definition on, is this business B2C? Is this business in a geography that we operate in? Just having that kind of murky view of the historical data that's come in makes it difficult for us to make good decisions for our future initiatives. What campaigns do we put in market? Do we turn up against the United States, turn down against Australia, New Zealand, that kind of thing? Another one is then being able to run like tactical initiatives with poor data is difficult. So if we just think of a really basic use case, like our email marketing, even things like sending in the correct time zone for that individual, or ensuring that a first name doesn't have some crazy weird salutation, or someone's put test into like one of the forms that they've filled, or some bogus value. We want to clean that up and make sure that it is sound for everyone. And that's even at a company level. Typically in the past, you would partner with one, maybe two data vendors to provide you all of the data for your organization. And I think there are inherently issues with that. I think some data vendors might be stronger in certain geos or against certain industries than others. And what that means is there's this sort of patchy, inconsistent levels of quality of data enrichment. One vendor might be really strong in the US, one might be really strong in Europe, for example. And you want to be able to play to those strengths, right? But first and foremost, I think that the patchiness and the strengths can be played off against each other with all the huge customizations that are available in Clay to be able to control how your data is used. I think you don't have to lock into big, chunky kind of one-off contracts as well. You sort of pay as you go. I think it just comes down to flexibility. I had been looking into clay a lot. I recognized that clay was one of those technologies that had huge potential to give you a lot of control in how you carry out your enrichment. You could, with clay being so flexible with over 100 different data integrations and partners, you could say, hey, for all of our US leads or companies, we want to go with this vendor as the first choice in our enrichment waterfall. In EMEA, we want to go with this vendor because we know that one's stronger there and this one's stronger here. So I think that can then be extrapolated to a whole lot of different use cases for your data. Then you can augment that further. You could even run like, hey, we'll use vendor A and vendor B, and then we'll use some AI to determine based on like the website of that company, which vendor is stronger. And so you could run tests and you could go really deep on it if you wanted. But just having that flexibility is amazing. So I mentioned earlier, we look at like serviceable companies first and foremost. Is there some sort of B2C offering? Are they in a geography that we operate within? If so, great, we're going to keep enriching a whole heap more data points. But if not, we're going to stop there because we don't think they're going to have much value to us. It's just going to be a waste of money if we keep on enriching. You've basically got like a human that can go through all of your like tens of thousands of records in your CRM and make decisions and say, oh, hey, let's set that property. Let's give this company this industry value or setting, which you weren't able to do in the past. You sort of had to just like leave it to the vendor and sort of trust them, but not trust them. Now that we've got AI, we can sort of like sense check. It's like another set of eyes, the specialist in matching companies and reading through their websites, matching them to a one of 100 different industry values that we have in our CRM and deciding on the best one. And it can go and do that at an incredibly fast rate with a high degree of accuracy and in a very cheap way as well. One cool thing that we're working on with Sculpted is to be able to say, hey, if a human sees that we've decided that this is not serviceable, but they think that it actually could be, because the AI can get it wrong in some situations, then we're going to manually push for this company or this contact or person to be fully enriched as well. So we can have all this great control as well, and we can be really flexible, which those big vendors just don't allow. The reason we went with an agency first and foremost is because we needed to do this quite quickly, and we knew we didn't quite have the technical expertise to do it that fast. With the vision I had in my mind, I could have fumbled around and gotten somewhere in about 6 months, but we needed that done quickly. Then it became hugely apparent that once we got into it, that clay doesn't have a bunch of these native features that are needed to carry this out with great precision and cost effectiveness. Having a technical agency who understands clay, but also understands like development and how to make these work in a really lightweight and efficient way is super valuable. And we just wouldn't have even been able to tackle this straight up without an agency. So having an agency was fundamental. They've seen it before, they've done it before. They can customize to your company, and they can also give suggestions about how we could do something in a better way based on previous customers and experience as well. So generally, it's important with where the clay product's at right now to go with an agency, that's for sure. Unless you're probably a developer yourself, you could cobble something together, but now like Sculpted's built out this awesome sort of set of complementary products to clay, which help really fast track that and help you to customize for your organization as well. So go with agencies to help you fast track this and do it with some quality. But I think we sort of wrote like a bit of an RFI, informal one at least, and sent it out to on the Clay Slack channel actually, which is a great community with a lot of these clay agencies, as you say. Clay, I think, is traditionally being used a little bit more for sort of some of those outbound email personalization at scale use cases. But I could see very clearly that like there's this awesome sort of CRM enrichment opportunity with clay. I think clay's product is moving in that direction towards CRM enrichment. It's certainly not there. And there's a whole bunch of really rich features that we want to build out that allow us to maintain an awesome data foundation. So we needed a partner to be able to help us to do that. Turns out there's quite a bit of like sort of development work needed to assist with that and to ensure that we can have really consistent and complete and up-to-date data run for us in a really cost-effective way as well. I think there's probably smart ways to set up Clay so that it is really cost-effective and really accurate. And there's also, you could do things in a pretty silly way that would cost quite a bit as well. So having a partner definitely in the long run, especially save us on Clay credits and open AI API sort of cost as well. So that has been a really key part. But also I think just like having the technical knowledge to build out like this really efficient and smart kind of infrastructure and setting all of these different rules that were really custom and bespoke to our organization was invaluable. Sculpted were able to do it in a way that didn't seem like too much of a issue on their end, but done in a really smart way. So I was just shocked at like, hey, this problem that we've come up against looks really juicy and difficult to tackle on face value, but Sculpted were kind of able to simplify it, break it down, and make it really easy to get a fix in place. So yeah, there's some tactical stuff, there's some decision-making stuff. There's also some really foundational stuff as well that we want to implement. So we wanted to clean up all of our data, make it reliable, trustworthy, and then put in programs like lead scoring, for example, so that we can know that how many serviceable leads that we have, we can surface those serviceable leads or companies to our sales team, our SDRs, who can then go ahead and work them once they have some good engagement data. And obviously with all the other data points, the more enrichment that we put in place, we can then tweak those scores further to say, hey, these ones are really high value. They're aligned really tightly to our ICP. By the way, some additional work that we did with Sculpted as well to do some ICP analysis too. So we have a really good definition of our ideal customer that we can then sort of peg our lead scoring program to, which I'm excited to kick off in the coming. We have different kind of enrichment needs for different segments within our CRM. So we've got like customers, people associated with a deal. So maybe they're actively involved in a deal or an opportunity with our sales team. And then we've kind of got everyone else. And we want to treat the enrichment for those different buckets or segments differently. We kind of want to trust what humans have entered against those companies or those contacts. We want to kind of trust that, and we don't want to overwrite that. So we set up rules that said, hey, if a human changed any of these properties, these values that we would typically enrich against with Clay, then we don't want to overwrite that. We want to stand down that enrichment and overriding that for 9 months. This data is constantly moving. It's a fluid thing for a lot of these data points. We want to make sure it's up to date and fresh, but we want to stand that down if a human overrid it, because we trust our human, especially when they're having these really important commercial conversations, to get this information right. So being able to distinguish those buckets and then write rules basically against every single data point that were different rules. So some of them needed to stand down if there was a human overwrite, or trust certain integrations that overwrote some of those properties, but not trust others. We had to sort of code up different rules for different properties for different buckets. Sculpted did a really great job of finding a smart way to carry that out, which Clay couldn't quite offer on its own, and that I certainly couldn't do myself. So that's one example of many, many different examples, but just the technical expertise, the ability to implement really what are actually quite complex solutions in a really simple way was just super invaluable. We did a whole lot of validation and like sense checking before we did big pushes back into the CRM. And I know that's part of the Sculpted product, making sure we get it right on a small batch before we go ahead and override everything else in the CRM. But I know that the outputs and what's returned was super sound. The accuracy was just like scarily really good. All of the rules that we had set up in the rules engine were adhered to. the standard and the quality of the enrichments was really high when I did some manual research around certain samples of the data that we sent out to be enriched. So I didn't know half the stuff that Christian was doing. He's a super switched on guy. He's got that engineer brain. He's a huge asset. Like, technologies and machines can only do so much. You need like smart switched on operators and brains to orchestrate that stuff. And Christian's that guy. We wouldn't have been able to do a tenth of what we set out to achieve without the help of Sculpted. I had this vision in my head that clay sounds perfect for creating this like great, clean, always up-to-date data set for us to be confident and make good decisions from and run really impactful initiatives against this awesome data set. It became quite apparent that we got responses from a lot of people who were all about doing outbound personalized email at scale. That's an area of interest, but I see that as a very, small part of our overall kind of go-to-market tactics. I wanted to make sure that we had this awesome foundation of quality, reliable data that we could trust. And the responses I was getting from a lot of agencies, they didn't get it. Essentially, they were showing me examples of all of their different email at scale kind of tactics, which have a place, but they didn't have a place for this project and this bigger strategic piece that we wanted to carry out. There were a couple who sort of seemed to get it, but Sculpted were above and beyond the others. Also went above and beyond, provided me with a really awesome kind of set of deliverables, an awesome statement of work, timings, broke the project down into all of its composite parts, made it really easy to sort of visualize the journey that would need to go on in what was a pretty short timeline as well. Clay allows us to basically like customize our enrichment. And then when you partner with a really smart agency, I suppose, like Sculpted, they can just like fast track that and help you get to those definitions and build those out really quickly as well. So Sculpted's been invaluable in helping us to get that sound definition of some of those really business critical data points that we need. And for what I think was a really fair and reasonable price. So super accommodating. Sculpted knew that there was a bunch of exploration that we would have to do together to get this right. And I think any company that wants to go through this journey themselves would need to be aware of that there's some sort of exploration on your side. You need to define business logic and rules that you can then apply to your enrichment logic and rules as well. Sculpted were willing to go on that journey with us and guide us along the way. They've built some pretty awesome products off the back of it to make that really easy and repeatable for the many other businesses that I'm sure will partner with Sculpted to set up this kick-ass sort of enrichment foundation and CRM data. Super excited to keep exploring everything with Sculpted, with Clay. Clay's going to continue evolving. Sculpted's going to continue like pushing the boundaries. We're excited to keep pushing the boundaries and sort of be pioneering in this area. Yeah, I'm just super excited for what comes next and what yourself and Christian come up with, and to keep going on the journey with you guys. So props to Sculpted, and it's been awesome and looking forward to what's ahead.